Chhatisgarh, right at the heart of India and possessing much of her soul. Hello, I'm Rob McBride. Join me as I go searching for some of Chhatisgarh's hidden secrets. From the dancers and the musicians keeping alive their cultural heritage, to ancient temple sites lost and found in the jungle. And what this part of Chhatisgarh is also well known for is its tribal tradition, meaning we'll be taking our cameras to some out-of-the-way places to meet some out-of-the-ordinary people. As a journalist and writer, well-travelled around Asia generally and India in particular, I'm often drawn to the offbeat and unusual that tribal areas provide. And northern Chhatisgarh is home to hundreds of tribal groups. People whose lives and lifestyles offer colour and variety. I've come to the district of Jashpur in search of one man I've been told about who has a particular liking for an animal most of us steer well clear of. Namaste. Sapera kaha hai?
सपेरा वाला यहाँ नहीं है, उधर है।
Sapera
वाला नहीं है,
nahi hai?
नहीं है, उधर रहता है।
Ah, I thought this village. Sapera. It's like a snake wallet.
नहीं है, यहाँ नहीं रहता है, उधर
Snake wallet?
रहता है। नहीं रहता है।
After some asking, I'm eventually directed to the home of Pilu Sai Pankra. Piluji, namaste. I'm just in time apparently. You are the man with a surprise in a box. But it's not in the box for long. And what type of snake is this? Ah, that'll be a cobra, is it? Not a happy cobra. Catching and releasing snakes is what Pilu does, but not before taking something from them first. For Pilu is a drinker of venom, extracting and consuming it every day. Is there a particular flavour of venom you prefer? I mean, a king cobra. What's your favourite flavour?
करंट का मेरे सूरत हो जाता है, नशा आ जाता है। सबका आगे सब कुछ सामने।
Right, lovely. Wow.
सामने, सबके सामने। हाँ।
Good. That's a fine snake. Oh, that's fine. That's close enough. Don't want to scare the snake, obviously. Sorry, I'm walking back into the fence here. Every village in India can be counted on to provide one or two characters whose reputations become as big as the village itself. There's a very special feeling about the Indian village. If you strip away all of the material possessions and the trappings of sophistication that we have in our modern urban lives, what you're left with is people, pure and simple, and their relationships with other people and the basis of community. It's something most of us have lost an awful long time ago. Spending time in the villages in Chhatisgarh has been a hugely rewarding experience, refreshingly human. The rural communities of Chhatisgarh have remained largely untouched by time or the outside world. The hilly terrain and dense forests acting as a barrier to foreign influences. Tend to have it. You put a click. And it wasn't until 100 years ago that the major trade routes with the rest of India first penetrated here. The village of Putputra is typical of so many. Not much in the way of modern trappings, but employing the simplest of materials, including the very mud of the land, to marvellous effect. Namaste. I found you at last. It takes some finding here. You're the famous woman I've been hearing about in the village. I've come to see Sona Bai, now nationally famous for her work with clay, turning out figures of people and animals. How long does it take to make something like this? It began as a way of entertaining her children who had no toys to play with. Soon her whole family became involved in making clay objects, turning their home into a living monument to their endeavours. As her fame spread, eventually she was given the President's Award. Now in her 80s, she's still actively shaping mud and doesn't mind sharing her expertise with the uninitiated. Time to get a lesson from the master, and I think we're making pigeons or doves. A bird of some description anyway. So, can you tell me how to make this first of all? It's going to be a small pigeon. Can I have a bit more clay? Ah, I used a bit of water. That's where I've been going wrong, I think. I didn't have water. I didn't have any water. That's obviously the problem. You've got smooth mud that holds together, and mine just falls apart. Can I just show this a second? So that's your mud, and this is my mud. I think she's using different mud. She's getting it from somewhere. She's cheating. Okay, I'm fashioning it like yours. Mine's more of a wading bird rather than a pigeon. I think I'll have a sitting pigeon rather than a flying one. I think wings are a bit beyond me at this stage on my first lesson. So that way it's actually more like a prawn, and that way it's back to the kingfisher.
At the time of our visit, the home was prepared for Shraddh, the festival to remember the souls of departed ancestors. Centered around its Ram Lakshman Janki temple, generations of worshippers have dedicated other temples to different gods here, bestowing the site with 10 shrines in all. Visited by worshippers from all over the state, the spiritual forming a very important element of everyday life in this part of India. Most of the temples here were built between the 9th and 12th centuries. But parts of this site, including the idols themselves, going back a lot further.
Common to all of these temples is a real sense of place and history. Some of the first temples to be built on this site date back more than 2,000 years.
One other legend links this temple with another one in Janjgir district, unusual for being in 2 parts. Legend has it that Lord Vishwakarma was told in a dream to construct both temples during the space of one full moon night.
The story goes that while Lord Vishwakarma finished the first temple, he ran out of time before completing this, the second, the dome for it ending up on the other side of the road, still waiting for someone to put it in place.
Named after Vishnu, one of the Holy Trinity and the god responsible for preserving the universe. The walls of the shrine are ornately decorated with carvings of dancers and musicians. But being incomplete, the temple is considered nonetheless nakta, being without honor. The name Chhatisgarh means 36 forts, derived from the different principalities which make up the state. A number of those principalities still with their princely palaces, like this one in Korea district.
For me, one of the best parts of the trip has to be visiting the ancient temple sites, these great ruins that hadn't ceased to exist, they were merely in the process of changing function. These great temples that, although many of them are now ruins, they're still very much alive with their own legends and myths and fables. Also very much alive with nature. All of the sites seem to be this deep, peaceful green.
And as some of Chhatisgarh's older temples have crumbled with age, often those legends are all that remain. I've come with local resident Shukla to Maheshpur, a site of archaeological importance that attracts foreign visitors and scholars alike. Nestling by the gentle Renuka River, the site is dominated by a Shiv temple from the 10th century. But other temples, or the remains of them, are scattered around, dating as far back as the 8th century. Over hundreds of years, some of the temples all but crumbled away, so it's impossible to tell where one begins, the other one ends. Others still pretty much intact, but twisted and distorted out of shape by time. As we're about to leave, Shukla spots something in the bottom of a drainage ditch, exposed by the recent rains.
Can you come back here a second?
A local farmer helps dig, and gradually the earth gives up its treasure. A water vessel used for ceremonial worship, estimated to be 1,000 years old. Another piece of history yielded by the land, and an indication of the wealth of artifacts still waiting to be found. Chhatisgarh is alive with ancient links to its cultural past. I've come to a hillside near Hartipal in Sarguja in search of twin caves, Sitabangra and Jogimara.
We climbed a hill to go to the theatre.
It could be one of the earliest types of theatre in India and possibly the world, with performances known to have been given here as far back as 200 years BC. This is where the legend has it that poet Kalidas lived, and where the classic fable Meghdut could have been written and performed for the very first time.
And right up to the stage itself, where the performers in prehistoric times would be able to project out to the audience and to the valley beyond, helped by this natural echo. Kaha ho Meghdut! 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 Meghdut!
As if in answer, the deity Meghdut gave us a suitably heavenly response. The skies open up, announcing his presence. Welcome and life-giving, the rains help set the rhythm of life in this part of the world, where the agricultural calendar dominates. Good rains are a cause for celebration.
In every agricultural society, the big events of the calendar, like the planting or the harvesting, are hugely significant to be marked by various ceremonies and rituals. And in India, song and dance in particular, and lots of it.
This dance, like many others in local tribal tradition, incorporating auspicious peacock feathers into the costume. The colour of shirts remains the choice of the individual villagers. This community apparently big on pink. After that, time for a little pastoral tranquility. I've come to another part of Korea district in search of a tree trunk that gives forth water. What I've found is actually the source of the Hasdeo River. Originating from the nearby hills as a natural spring, it runs underground before emerging here through this hollow tree trunk. The nearby brook dries up during part of the year, but the tree trunk continues to ooze water throughout. As clean and sweet as any bottle of mineral water, they tell me. One tiny spring, but fed by monsoon rains, the Hasdeo is eventually transformed into a mighty watercourse. in turn giving life to the land that it runs through.
This time of year, just as the monsoon rains are coming to an end, has to be the best to visit Chhatisgarh, and also bring with you your camera, for everywhere you're going to turn your lens, you're going to get great pictures. The whole panorama just comes to life. The rivers are in full flood, all of the vegetation is green, and every possible shade of green you can think of. Also the browns of the earth are so rich, and against that, when you get just tiny specks like a sari and a rice paddy in the distance, it just shines like a beacon. Great pictures.
One tiny spring, but fed by monsoon rains, the Hasdeo is eventually transformed into a mighty watercourse, in turn giving life to the land that it runs through. An abundance of water combined with weather and soil, contriving to create Eden-like conditions. It's meant that Chhatisgarh has become one of the most densely forested states in India. A full 43% of the state's landmass is covered by woodland, and statewide planting schemes ensure it maintains that enviable position.
It's in places like this, Guru Ghasidas National Park, that you really experience the forested beauty of Chhatisgarh. Acres and acres of rolling, dense woodland, which is home to a whole range of different wildlife, which, if you're lucky enough, you might actually get to see.
Named after a prominent social reformer who hailed from Chhatisgarh, the park forms part of the Green Corridor running across 4 central Indian states.
So this road we're on actually goes on for kilometres and kilometres all around the national park, which means that access is really extremely easy. We're in the middle of this dense virgin forest, as you can see, and yet we're driving along as though we're on a highway.
The guidebook lists a whole variety of wildlife, but like any nature trail, you have to come equipped with patience.
So a few kilometres into the park, and so far 1 peacock and 2 monkeys. Not a very impressive tally to date, but maybe we should try a different tactic.
On top of the vehicle instead of inside it, acting as live bait. The end of my visit and no wildlife.
Still, I've only had a very short time here. I have to go on and explore the rest of Chhatisgarh. But if you do come and are prepared to spend the time, go out in the early mornings or in the evenings, then there is wildlife to be seen. And even if you don't see any wildlife, there is always the view and the silence. Those bears and cheetahs would have ruined it all anyway with their damn jabbering, or whatever it is they do.
Chhatisgarh, a state offering tranquility, but at other times able to make a big noise.
Early in the morning, we're in the village of Chindikalu with Vrendas, a local villager, 1 small rock and 1 very big rock. Why? This is why. It doesn't sound like a rock hitting a rock, it actually sounds like iron. And as you move the stone around the big stone, if you can do it as well, it makes different tones. And not only that stone sounds a bit like metal, and this one also sounds a bit like metal. A different pitch again. We could probably start playing a tune quite soon. And down here is another one. So as you can see, you get a bit of a rhythm going. Very like music. It's not only the people of Chhatisgarh that are musical, so are their rocks.
A rock this special has to have a legend to match, and I wasn't going to be disappointed. Premdas proceeded to tell me, and quickly.
बंदरकोट का रानी जो है आकर के यहाँ हमारा नाच करते थे, नाच करता था, उसके बाद में यहाँ बताओ।
A long time ago, a utensil trader was spending the night here when he kidnapped a fairy, took off her sari, taking away her magical powers, and then married her. They had 3 children. The youngest son was getting married, and the fairy asked to have her sari back so she could dance at her son's wedding. As soon as she got the sari back, she flew away and put a curse on that metal trader, turning him into a stone that sounds like, yes, you guessed it, metal. TK.
A short distance away from the banging stone, the banging drum.
Another drummer. Whole village of them.
The Shaila dance is performed throughout the countryside during October and November, after the harvest.
I think often the indigenous peoples, or tribals as they're known here in India, are overlooked in so many ways. They are the ones, after all, who create a bond between the people and the land, hugely valuable to the nation as a whole.
That tribal tradition in Chhatisgarh stretching back into prehistory. Following the trail sometimes takes you off along tracks not so well defined.
And when that track runs out, you have to be prepared for a bit of a hike. Some of the secrets of Chhatisgarh are so hidden, they take some tracking down.
I've come to the Ranidara forest and have started to take a path down the front face of Ushakodi Hill. This whole area used to be inhabited by the original indigenous communities of Chhatisgarh, the earliest stirrings of civilization here.
And what you finally find when you get here are cave paintings, one of several sites around Chhatisgarh offering tantalizing clues to an ancient civilization about which still very little is known.
Little may be known about their communities and customs, but the fact of their existence is not in doubt. A people who certainly left their mark. Strange and vivid shapes in white, red and yellow. Occasionally an animal or two. A people who wanted to decorate the place where they lived with the designs and colours that appealed to them. In Kadgawan in Korea district, the inhabitants are busy touching up their walls and adding new creations. It's a tradition that is practiced throughout this area. Bright and colourful designs of everyday subjects taken from their daily lives. And with all the paintings, ingredients taken from nature to make the colours. Chhatisgarh, a new state with some very old traditions and some cultural surprises. Next to its water harvesting pond in the middle of Pali, the temple here is judged to be one of the finest examples of its kind in the country, recognized and protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. Built 1,000 years ago by Vikramaditya during the Ban dynasty.
Here at the temple in Pali, a number of the carvings are of an erotic nature, intended to ward off evil spirits and also making for some interesting photographs.
The Dipadi temple site, by comparison, offers 30 temples or their remains scattered over 5 kilometers and several hundred years of temple building. This plateau in Sarguja was home to entire villages of masons contributing their offerings in stone. The rock used and the style of carving employed giving away the ages of the individual shrines.
Some of the temples are harder to reach than others. This one at Deepadi has taken some getting to, but once you do get here, you might well find you're the only one here.
From places of worship ancient to those that are far more modern. The Catholic Church in Kunkuri in Jashpur district is one of the largest in India, able to accommodate 5,000 people and contributing to Chhatisgarh's spiritual diversity. At Mainpat in Sarguja, probably the most surprising example of that diversity. Tibetan prayer flags fluttering above the houses tell you this is a village with a difference. A community of more than 1,000 refugees from Tibet and their descendants, now finding themselves washed up by the tide of history in central India. Making new lives for themselves, they were first settled here in 1963. Now a thriving community, Mainpat is home to a monastery, attracting monks from other settlements around India. A community supporting itself through carpet weaving and agriculture and holding true to the traditions and customs that they brought here all those decades ago from their native Tibet.
Just one more of Chhatisgarh's hidden secrets. A tiny part of Tibet transplanted to the center of a very large part of India. The other night we were travelling along between two different locations. I was looking out the window up at the terrific monsoon skies they have here, and there was an electrical storm, could have been 50 kilometres away, way over on the far, far horizon and beyond, flashing away. Where I come from, Hong Kong, we don't actually have any skies anymore. We've traded them in for big buildings and light pollution. Well, so one of the enduring memories I'm going to take away from Chhatisgarh isn't only the landscapes, but also the skyscapes.